Hello
Hello.
from SCaLE 22X. This is the PostgreSQL live stream. So I'm joined by Mark Wong of the US PostgreSQL Association. And we're going to be talking a little bit about the conference and Postgres in general, the future of Postgres, if you can cover that in a short live stream. So yesterday we had a lot of interesting talks here at SCaLE. Let me pull up the schedule for today's talks. Um, Yesterday we kicked off with Magnus, who explained the new features in Postgres 18. Um, was there anything that you found particularly exciting about this new release that's coming up?
Oh, now I've already started to forget. My retention is so bad these days. Um, I I always, because of some of the benchmarking I used to do, I
Mm-hmm.
always more excited to hear about what are the performance improvement stuff going on.
Yeah.
Um, so keeping my eyes out for how the folks are doing with the async IO, for example.
Yeah. So performance, it's kind of a quiet topic in the sense that you don't get to hear about many of the performance improvements from release to release. You just see them in the release notes. We improved indexes, index performance, and really, it just keeps getting better with every release, silently, um, in various areas. So one day we improve the backup speed. One other day we improve indexing performance for a type of index. There's all these quiet things that the difference that's going to be felt the most, I think, by DBAs is the fact that buffers is now enabled by default in explain analyze. And of course, buffers gives you output that explains how many bytes you're actually reading and writing to disk for your queries, which is always good to know. Um, so that is the wrong page that I pulled up. Um, uh, what other talks did you find interesting from yesterday's schedule?
Oh, let's see. Um, so I remember Christoph was up after Magnus with the UTF-8 stuff.
Right,
And then,
and locales.
yeah, locales. I didn't get to see as much of the um, contention, or the I can't remember names. PG Edge.
PG, right. The conflict resolution strategies,
Yes, yeah,
right.
the
So that
conflict
was
was.
a really comprehensive talk by Hamid Akhtar.
Mhm.
It was about conflicts in single master or traditional Postgres replication.
Yeah,
How you can get into a situation where, for example, you're reading from a replica a row that you're just deleting on the master or primary server, and how much more complicated detection, conflict management is for multi-master systems, like the one offered by PG Edge.
yeah, and and I missed most of the Ferret DB presentation, and I caught um, the end of Devram talking about the extensions.
Right. FerretDB, we brought this up on yesterday's live stream as well, is a fully MongoDB compatible solution based entirely on PostgreSQL as the database layer, and they've built an equally open source compatibility layer on top. Uh, I think people are abandoning the less than open source MongoDB to use because it gives them much of the same functionality without the strings attached. And also, it has a really solid database backend in Postgres that you can trust, with point in time recovery, reliability, all these different ways to perform backups, all things that MongoDB was sorely lacking in.
Mm.
So yeah, I think that's making a splash. Devrim spoke about extensions, and I think the thing that he highlighted a lot in his talk was the fact that, well, I wasn't as kind as him yesterday when someone asked me why does Postgres have so many extensions. I said most of them are junk,
Mm.
and that is harsh, but in reality, many extensions were one-offs written by someone to perform a specific task or add a specific feature they needed, and they just stopped development after that, or they stopped maintaining them. And that's what Devrim was saying. He was saying that the problem with most extensions, and let me explain who Devrim is. Devrim Guntas is the person who's been kindly making all the RPM packages for Red Hat based distributions for Postgres for years and years now. There's also Christoph Berg, who's making the Debian packages for Debian based distributions. And they get pestered a lot. They get asked by users of Postgres, when is the new version of this extension coming out in a package that I can use? And Devrim said, ask the maintainers, ask the extension developers, because really, when it's time to release a new version of Postgres, as the extension developer, you should be ready for that. You should have played with the beta version or release candidate of the new Postgres release and test to see if your extension actually builds with the new version. And that is the main compatibility problem, that sometimes the extension developers don't test with the new release. And that means that the package maintainers, Devrim and Christoph, and other people who are making packages for Postgres cannot package these extensions as a result, because the extensions don't build with the new release because of compatibility reasons, because of dependencies, you know, and that is a real problem. So that's about it for yesterday's talks. We had a panel, an Ask Me Anything session, where we got interesting questions from the audience, and that's also recorded, I believe,
Yeah.
on the SCaLE website. And let's move to today's topics. So right now, Hetty, Henrietta Dombrowska, is talking about PG Badger, and that is also getting recorded, as is every talk in the Postgres track and any other track at SCaLE. So PG Badger, of course, a tool that analyzes your Postgres logs and can point out anomalies like performance issues, number of errors. And
Good tool to get used to or familiar with.
Yeah, like I think it's a Swiss knife for a DBA who is taking care of Postgres installations, because it can detect so many things automatically for you. And you don't have to set up your own filtering in AWS or Datadog or whatever you're using, right? You can just point this at your logs wherever they happen to be stored, and it detects all these conditions for you. Then we have a talk by Sean Thomas, who's going to be talking about PG Vector and how to use that for AI stuff in general. PG Vector, of course, the extension that allows you to store and index text embeddings in Postgres, a critical component for RAG systems or retrieval augmented generation, uh, which is basically the useful kind of AI,
Yes.
because if it's not based on your data, then AI can't give you an answer that's useful to you, really. It can give you a generic answer, but it might not reflect the reality of the nature of your data.
Right.
And after that, Gulchin and Andrew are going to be talking about table level locking and Postgres. Nick Meyer is going to be talking about the progression from Postgres 9.2 to Postgres 15 and beyond. I have to dive into the abstracts for this one.
I think it's supposed to be his story about I think some migrations, dealing with migrations over the long life and many versions
Right,
since.
right. My question was, why did he stop at 15? And
Oh,
it turns out that I think it's his story of migrating in production from one version to the next, and what challenges that entails, which tells us that they're using Postgres 15 in production. Why shouldn't they, Mark?
well, you want to keep up with new versions for various reasons like performance and well, new features kind of depends on your workloads. I think sometimes, and but being able to keep up with the supported versions is certainly good. And what is the
When's the end of support for Postgres 15? It's in a couple of
oh
years, I think.
I'm so bad with doing year math. Okay, so we're on 17. Uh, so 15 should have a few years left.
Right. I think 2 years. I might be wrong. Let's look up the versioning
All right,
policy.
we're cheating.
Of course, we have a laptop in front of us. We can cheat. So 15 was released in 2022, and the final release is going to be in November 2027.
Okay.
So that's a couple of years from now, more than 2.5 years from now. Plenty of time to plan for an upgrade. We heard a horror story yesterday at the panel. Christoph was saying, and Stacy were saying that one of their customers, excuse me, one of their customers is stuck on Postgres 8.2, right? Regardless of all the obvious implications for security and performance and features that are missing, what they remarked was that with every year that passes, that customer is even more stuck, right? Because while you can upgrade from Postgres 8.2 to 8.3, 9, 10, 11, up to all the way progressively, not in one step, but progressively, you can upgrade all the way to the current release, it becomes progressively harder.
Yeah.
So the longer you leave it, the harder it becomes to upgrade. So the recommendation we always make is upgrade as soon as the new release is out. Start planning for the upgrade and switch to that. I know it's hard to convince corporate structures in particular.
Yeah, it's not always trivial. It's a lot of work, right?
Yeah. Because a lot of things depend, right? If you have development teams that are building on an older release, they have to retool, they have to test with a new version, and then they say, oh, but our feature roadmap, and we can't spend time for your upgrade while we have our features to build. And that is always a trade-off that you need to have as the database team with the development team or whoever else. you need to work with. But go ahead.
Oh,
Oh, sorry. I thought you were about to say something.
no, sorry.
So the truth is that you're exposing yourself to unnecessary risk by not upgrading. At the very least, what you can do is keep up immediately with the latest minor releases, which are the point numbers. So for version 17, that would be 17 point.
We're up to 2 or 3 now. Oh, 4.
17.4 is the latest minor release that fixes quite significant
Yeah, but I had a
security vulnerability. A couple of security vulnerabilities were disclosed recently. So, for security reasons alone, you should upgrade to the latest minor release as soon as possible. It doesn't, you should, of course, test, but there's no compatibility issues ever between minor releases. Well, ever asterisk. There shouldn't be, but there are no.
It's planned to be compatible.
Yeah, let's just say that there are no features added in or removed, for that matter, in minor releases. Only major releases add features, and they're allowed to break compatibility, but not backward compatibility. So and that's another thing that I like about Postgres. You're generally able to upgrade from any version to any other version, and not just the GA releases, for example. I mean, there's another database family that springs to mind that only lets you upgrade from specific releases to specific releases and nothing in between, right? So you're out of luck if you're using one of those. Cool. So next up is my talk on row-level security.
You're wrapping us up today.
Yeah, that is the last talk for the day. I won't get into too much detail now, but row-level security is a feature that Postgres has that almost nobody is using. And in my talk, I'm going to explain why they're not using it and what can be done to make it, more practical for application developers. Which concludes the looking at the schedule on the laptop part of this stream. So, Postgres, as we've discussed online and on social media and in the previous live stream, is accelerating. There's no denying this. It's becoming the de facto standard for a lot of things. You even see major corporations, software corporations, and hyperscalers scrambling to say our product is compatible with Postgres, which I think is telling. I think it does show that it's recognized as a really reliable and accessible database, in the sense that it doesn't restrict you in what you want to do. Do you want to build a blog? You can use Postgres. Do you want to build a microsite using Django or whatever other platform? You can use Postgres. Do you need to store terabytes of customer data? You can also use Postgres for that, right? It doesn't point you to a specific usage category or specific use case.
Yeah.
So how are we as the Postgres community, right? And you're on the board of the U.S. Postgres Association, or PGUS for short. How are we dealing with this uptick, this increase in interest for Postgres?
Oh, well, uh, I, I guess with PGUS, what we're trying to keep up with is interest in people wanting to start meetups or finding meetups to learn more, or even are one-day events that we don't really have too many of in the U.S. right now, or even the bigger conferences. Um, I think I think it's just for the PGUS efforts, just trying to keep up with that as best as we can. Um,
So, and it's worth mentioning that PGUS is a volunteer organization, the same as the PostgreSQL development group, also volunteers. Um, of course, many Postgres developers are paid by companies to contribute to Postgres,
yeah,
but the project is run on a voluntary basis strictly. The governance is voluntary, is a voluntary organization, and so are the user associations,
hmm
both in the US and Europe.
yeah. So we try to. I don't know how to give a reference for the meetup site that we have for some of the meetups with people. Jim is saying, as a volunteer organization, we're always looking for people who think they have the time and energy of organizing a meetup too. Help get some of these groups together and to learn from each other and whatnot.
Right. Yeah. So I think meetups are really important for this because the local interest groups can self-organize and hold their own, informative sessions or talks or group meetups without requiring the few people that volunteer for PGUS to run to their specific location, right, and help them out. So, what other forms of support does PGUS offer for these
Oh,
teams?
so um, help supporting the meetups user groups.
There's a Meetup account that they can use for free, I believe.
Uh, well, kind of, not exactly. So we do pay for a pro meetup account, so we can have this kind of umbrella, if you will. If you were looking for a Postgres meetup, you can go to the. Oh, I'm so bad with these meetup terms. I think there's a dashboard that shows all the um, meetups under this organization, under this umbrella, so you can see whether there's one near you. Um, the how we try to support it is if a group comes together somewhere where we don't have a meetup, and they can get one going when the meetup sizes get to a certain size, and it's going to cost money to keep that meetup account going. If we find an agreeable way to get the meetup under the Postgres Pro, I think they call them Pro accounts, in Meetup, then um, PGUS will take on those fees for you to help keep that Meetup going and uh, allow it to grow.
Yeah, that is a great help because meetups cost money. I mean, in many examples, they're usually hosted after work
Mm.
at some company's headquarters. Because usually there's someone using Postgres or interested in Postgres working at that company, and they ask for permission to use the office after hours for the meetup, and that is effectively free for them. But it can only grow to a certain size, right? You can invite 10, 15, 20, 50 people.
Yeah,
If there's more interest than that, you have to find a venue for your event. And venues cost money in most
yeah,
cases.
yeah. A couple of other things that PGUS will try to help with meetups trying to get going is there's um, one of our little committees is trying to keep it's a better word than catalog, but uh, a, they have a list of speakers who are willing to travel that we will try to send out to either kick things off or put someone on your schedule that you might not necessarily think you'll be able to have speak at your meetup, and offer some funds to get pizzas and sodas once in a while.
Yeah, and that is great because, again, all the speakers that appear at community PostgreSQL events are volunteers, right? Some of them even pay their own way to be at these events and share their knowledge with the community. So that's always great. Many of them hugely experienced PostgreSQL professionals and contributors to the project. So yeah, as you said, it's a nice bonus for your meetup to have one of the leading members of the community appear and kick off the proceedings. So that's a great help as well. Now, looking beyond the community, right? The first question is, how do we expand the Postgres community? How do we bring more people into this? Just yesterday, at question time, an audience member approached us and remarked how open and friendly the PostgreSQL community is. We were relieved to hear that because it is something we all try to enforce, let's say. We try to be a friendly community. We are very open and welcoming. We are working on diversity issues on both sides of the pond. We have the PGUS diversity committee kicked off things. We now have one in Europe as well. We try to be inclusive. We try to reach out to other communities that are not, because let's face it, right? The people who turn up at Postgres events are usually database administrators, and that is a very particular demographic. So we try to reach out to other developer communities. We try to reach out, to open source enthusiasts in general. So this is why we're here at SCaLE, which is primarily an open source conference. It's, Linux stands for open source in general, I guess, after all these years.
Yes.
What else can the PostgreSQL project do to reach out to other communities, do you think?
Well, one of the other things I'm a little involved in is finding other events to do little community Postgres exhibitions at. SCaLE here is one that it isn't primarily a Postgres or even database event, touching a little bit of everything. So this is one example of where we get involved. We try to stay active in the Python community, well, exhibiting at PyCon, for example. Sometimes we're able to exhibit at RailsConf. Let's see, what are some other ones offhand I think of? SRECon for the SRE folks. There's also the Java developers. I can't remember how they phrase it, but DevNexus is going on right now for the Java community.
Oh yeah, I did actually see social media posts by members of the Postgres community who are there and actually speaking, I think.
Yeah. Another event I think is similar to SCaLE in having a wide spectrum of open source communities is All Things Open. The ones that I primarily know about are the ones in the US over here. FOSS4G, some open source GIS, an open source GIS event.
Yeah, I've been to a couple of FOSS4Gs in Europe,
Yeah,
and of course Postgres needs to be there.
yeah.
There are exhibitors there. There's Esri as usual. There's OGC. There's all these proprietary things, and but there are also open source tools there, and you can bet that half of the people at geospatial conferences are using Postgres underneath with PostGIS or PostGIS or however you want to pronounce it.
Yeah, and we even started exhibiting at PASS for those also involved in the SQL Server world, the Professional Association of SQL Server. I don't know if I left out an S.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. That is an event kicked off by Redgate, I think.
They own it now. So they were originally, I think, I can't remember what the original nonprofit organization was, which might have been Pass itself, but Redgate has taken over managing that event now.
Right. Redgate, a company with interest in Postgres as well, right? We have seen a lot of organizations, a lot of vendors and services companies turn their interest towards Postgres as well, even though their main customer base and the main bulk of their sales is with other database systems. And that's interesting. Very notably, we've seen Microsoft embrace Postgres in a big way. AWS gave a huge boost to Postgres with their cloud offerings. I think when they made Postgres available on RDS, that added a lot of users who were instructed or directed to use the cloud, but there was no cloud Postgres offering from a big vendor that they could use.
Right.
So, yeah, coming back to the topic of events, it is really good that you will get people who are not Postgres people just wander in and want to learn about this database thing that they keep hearing about. And this kind of exposure, I think, is really good because even if the person attending doesn't end up using Postgres directly, they can transfer this knowledge to someone else in their organization, right? They can go, I was at this conference and they were talking about Postgres. Why are we stuck on X database when everyone else seems to be using this nowadays? And it can start a current, within the workplace or the organization that they belong to that's driving people towards Postgres. So and that is the key thing about all these events. It's about knowledge transfer and knowledge sharing, right? You hear about all these different use cases. I used Postgres for this. I used this feature because my boss wanted me to do this thing. I made this cool thing on my own. And these are all interesting stories that resonate with the general public. I mean, you have Andreas's famous ice cream talk with storing GPS coordinates and pictures of every ice cream he's ever had.
I haven't had a chance to see that one yet.
I'm sure there are recordings of it somewhere, and it should be revived for the future, for sure. So these are all interesting use cases. Some of them, just for fun, and some of them can actually make you money. So we're going to be wrapping up soon. I definitely want to hear what Sean has to say in the next talk about PG Vector. I've used some PG Vector to create some embeddings as well, and I found that it was really easy to use. It's just what it says on the can, right? You just follow the instructions, and it creates the indexes for you, and it just works. Now, I think the main challenge with vectors and embeddings is the sheer volume of data that you have to process. And I've been hearing concerns about improving indexing performance or retrieval performance. As people start experimenting more and more with this and applying it to larger data sets. So that's going to be a challenge going forward, and I'm looking forward to hearing what Sean's thoughts are on this. Any closing thoughts?
Well, thanks for letting me join you, Jimmy. And
Thank you.
looking forward to the expo hall here opening. If if anyone listening is nearby in LA, it's not too late to come by and visit.
Of course, yeah. There's a Postgres booth in the exhibition hall alongside all the big names because I think that's where we belong, right? Uh, Postgres is becoming an industry force, even if there's no Postgres company per
Mhm.
se. There are a lot of companies supporting Postgres and offering Postgres services, and you can come talk to us at the booth and find out all about it. Well, thank you very much, Mark.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Thanks, everyone. Bye bye.